Welcome back to the science of Super Mario 3D Land. I swear every time I embark on an adventure in this game, I always get sidetracked by some bizarre oddity I run into. One idea tends to morph into another, and this video is no different. What you're left with is a complete dissection of Pom Pom in ways the game never intended, ultimately turning her into a rocket ship and blasting her off to the heavens. So I hope you enjoyed this mad lab breakdown of Super Mario 3D Land. You know what's worse than jumping into water as Mario on your quest to stop evil? Nothing. Saving the world in soaking wet clothes would be awful. I can't fathom video game logic when it comes to complete waterproof outfits. But I can say I'm pretty surprised at how well Vessi makes her waterproof shoes. I'm a big outdoors buff who loves rainy days, but flopping around in giant rubber boots isn't my jam. Thankfully, Vessi's shoes are stylish, comfortable, and breathable, which is kinda crazy because they are indeed 100% waterproof. I've jumped around in puddles and this dual knit material keeps out all the water. You can even pour water over them and nothing is getting inside. I don't know how, because you'd think the trade-off for breathability would be they aren't waterproof, but that isn't the case at all. It's magic, man. Vessis are super easy to put on and are the perfect shoes for going on walks. They are really the only shoe you need for basically tackling anything, because they look slick and they are super functional for outdoors. So if wet feet aren't your jam and you're looking for a stylish new pair of kicks, click my link in the description below to get $25 off your pair of Vessis by using my code SwankyBox. And a huge thanks to Vessi for partnering with me for this video and supporting my channel. So let's talk about the humble beginnings of this concept. Today we're going to be breaking Pom Pom, but I think it's kind of neat to talk about what led to this. So let's swing on over to World 3-2 where my adventure began. World 3-2 is a stage I really like because it's a simple underwater excursion with a side-scrolling element. I chose this stage in particular because originally this video was going to be all about enemy characters and their interactions with water, especially characters that normally do not confront water. The stage is basically split into 3 areas. You have the first room that has that strange object buried beneath the sand, which is honestly kind of weird. It makes me feel like I can ground pound it, but I can't. But we can see it goes down quite a ways too if we pull our camera back. Anyways, we have that first room, the second long room, and the flagpole area. I chose the second room to be where my experimentation would take place, and I started off by building a very rough cage where enemies could be loaded in. The idea was that Luigi could ground pound the backside of the cage when ready, and the enemies could then walk into the water. However, upon choosing Pom Pom for my first victim, my direction changed quite a bit. So Pom Pom is generally fought within boss rooms that she hops around in. It's always a contained environment, and Mario is never too far away. But once she was placed in a non-controlled environment, my interest immediately peaked. Luigi went full-blown mad scientist, and the experimentation began. Or it would have began. But because the Pom Pom intro cutscene triggered when I was loading in through a pipe, Luigi was Thanos snapped out of existence. A minor setback that we can fix by reaching the first checkpoint, dying and backtracking. And now that we have that resolved, we can do the water test. And honestly, this test gave me mixed results. So when Pom Pom is placed onto a stage, especially one where it's more of a side scroller with very limited depth, she pretty much camps one spot. This is because Pom Pom actually uses jumping references that need to be placed independently of her. Without them, she just hops in place. However, these reference objects aren't needed to get her to follow our green boy Luigi. If you damage Pom Pom in any way, she'll climb inside her shell and attempt to smash us by seeking out a position and falling upon us. She hits 3 times before going back to normal, but during this process, she'll pretty much follow us anywhere. So it's a perfect time to have her try to follow us into the water. However, as expected, she simply passed through the water without any sort of state change, or at least at this moment. Since we didn't have a small room restricting us, we were able to get her to follow us quite a ways away. But that in itself made me realize something else. Pom Pom pretty much has a King Bomb jump like in Super Mario 64, and she'll always make a massive leap back to her spawning location. The time it takes to reach her starting location is always the same. So the farther away she is, the faster the movement takes place, to the point where it looks unnatural. It's possible for her to not make it all the way back to her spot either, especially if she runs into an obstacle. After her boomerang throws, she'll do a second hop, which will then take her back usually. What's interesting is that Pom Pom chases the player off the map with her shell smash attack. It's also possible for her to get stuck falling forever at the edge of the loading zone. If this occurs, she'll turn to a blurred mess as she spins for all of eternity. Since it doesn't count as ground, the attack doesn't complete the cycle, so she never knows to jump up. She doesn't move any farther though, because she'll unload if that was the case. I'm not sure why this failsafe is put into this move in particular, but it's something I encountered at other levels too where she wasn't at the death plane. Regardless, it got me thinking. Swinging on over to Pom Pom's weapon, I always thought her boomerangs had a range to them, but it turns out it was only the boss rooms defining that range. She can actually throw her boomerangs to the player regardless of where they're at. I noticed this originally when I was moon jumping out of bounds, and one of the boomerangs clipped its way through the stage to come out to me. I was really far away, yet it's still home to my location. There is a limitation to this similar to what I outlined earlier though. If Pom Pom's measured throwing distance attempts to hit our player, but let's say a wall's in the way, it's possible for the boomerangs to get stuck there for a long time. At this point, we can actually unload Pom Pom by going farther in the level, and then coming back. We can get her into a glitched state like this where she'll forever be waiting. Due to the gravity and the slope she was standing on, she slid down into the water during this process and was just stuck. It's kinda neat, but a level like this really limits Pom Pom's reach, so let's swap stages. And it was with this stage swap that I discovered something really neat. Onward to World 3-1, a huge desert level with a massive rock structure in the center. I chose this level for two reasons. One, it is a really wide stage that's essentially open world, and two, it is insanely tall, which gives us a lot of maximum space for Pom Pom. Going here, I wanted to test two things, so let's start with the boomerangs. It turns out, the only limitation to the distance in which Pom Pom can throw is actually just the loading distance for the game. The range on Pom Pom is quite big, and she doesn't unload as easily as most objects do when they are simply out of range of the camera. But Pom Pom's throw is capable of going beyond this loading zone if she initiates her throw on the frame in which we leave the loading zone range. But it's impossible to measure the full distance because her boomerangs unload when she does. If the loading zone was, say, unlimited, she'd be able to throw her boomerangs to our character even if it took several minutes to reach us. Kinda neat. So instead of tweaking her AI to calculate all sorts of different factors, they simply let the boss arena serve as a band-aid and barrier to keep everything in check. But it was messing with this loading zone range that I realized something really amazing could happen. I was in the process of testing how far Pom Pom's recovery jump would really go, so I damaged her, floated off the side of the stage, and let her fall down while she was attacking me in her shell. At this point, she got stuck on the edge of the loading zone and was hovering in place until I decided to move down. And then she king-ba-bombed up the mountain with one hefty leap. The first jump wasn't perfect, but she made it the entire way up the mountain. She then went back to her default position after she threw some attacks. But this is what got my brain going. So by this point, I was pretty familiar with how far Pom Pom's loading zone range was, but I also had seen examples in which unloading and loading her affected her actions. And this is when I channeled my inner Scuttlebug raising from Super Mario 64, and applied that concept to Super Mario 3D Land. If you're unfamiliar, Scuttlebug raising is a technique in Super Mario 64, which allows Scuttlebugs to continually raise in height by unloading them in the middle of their jump, and then reloading them so they can jump again, ultimately making them get higher and higher each time. However, with Pom Pom, I theorized that if she started her recovery reaction, and we made her exit the loading zone near the peak of her jump, that when she reloaded, her jump would occur again. I was also thinking that despite her being unloaded, she may have still been changing position values too, but it is something I couldn't prove. But my theory was sorta correct, although it was way more insane than I thought. After unloading and loading her, I returned to the top of the mountain to see if she was there, but she wasn't. But that's when I got the feeling that if the bottom of the loading zone was capable of holding her shell form in place, then the top of the loading zone relative to the player would probably be capable of holding her jump in place. So I moon jumped for the heavens and that's when I saw her. Pom Pom was moving upwards at a very fast rate, and she only loaded in for one single frame at a time as Luigi increased his vertical distance. She'd load in and then unload, because being loaded allowed her insane movement speed to kick in, but moving caused her to fall out of the loading zone. So she flickered like a light bulb as she climbed higher and higher into the sky, until eventually Pom Pom was no more. She blasted off into the great beyond, leaving little Luigi behind. So I fell back down to Earth hoping that maybe somehow she was down there, but alas, she was gone. It was my Super Mario Galaxy Voyager concept all over again. Pom Pom had become a rocket ship because we divide her jump into two, and she would never return to this world again. That's Super Mario 3D Land science in a nutshell, I suppose. I hope you enjoy this strange tale. And with that, thanks for watching guys and gals, and until my next blast off, cheers.